Have you ever wondered what happens when a husband comes home and barely speaks to his wife? When he walks past her like she's furniture? When the person you married becomes cold, distant, a stranger, sleeping in the same house? There was a woman in Italy who knew this pain. Her husband was a successful businessman, made good money, had a nice house. But every evening when he returned from work, he hardly said a word to her. He would leave the house without explanation and come back late at night. She felt invisible. She felt alone in her own marriage. She was desperate. She found a holy card with a picture of a Capuchin friar named Padre Pio. She knew almost nothing about him, but she held that card and prayed, "Please save our marriage." That was all she could say. That same night, her husband had a dream. He found himself walking down a beautiful marble staircase in what looked like a brand new hospital. 5 monks in brown habits were coming up the stairs toward him. They walked past him, but a 6th monk stopped directly in front of him. The monk stared at him with stern eyes. Then he raised his hand in a warning gesture. At that exact moment, the husband thought of his wife. He thought of how badly he had been treating her. He recognized the monk's face. It was Padre Pio. When the husband woke up, he was shaken. He walked to his wife's bedroom. She could hardly believe what she saw. He knelt down beside her bed. He spoke to her with tenderness he had not shown since the first days of their marriage. He asked for forgiveness for his coldness, for his neglect. She had never known him to apologize for anything. She had never seen him on his knees. His pride would never allow it. Later, when the woman made a trip to San Giovanni Rotondo, she walked through the home for the relief of suffering, the hospital Padre Pio had built. There it was, the wide marble staircase, the same one her husband had seen in his dream. If you value documented stories of faith and spirituality like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from documented testimonies in Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry. Issue 55, published April-June 2013 by Padre Pio Devotions, and from Bernard Ruffin's comprehensive biography, Padre Pio, The True Story, a 528-page work that pulled from Padre Pio's personal correspondence, interviews with dozens of his spiritual children, and letters of those who knew him. These aren't generic hagiographies. These are eyewitness accounts with names, dates, and places. Now back to the information. Padre Pio of Pietrelcina saw things most people never see. He bore the stigmata, the wounds of Christ, visible on his hands and feet and side for 50 years, from 1918 until his death in 1968. He spent 12 to 15 hours a day in the confessional. He could read souls. When people came to confess, he sometimes told them sins they had forgotten to mention. He knew their thoughts. He saw their spiritual state as clearly as you see your face in a mirror. That's what he told one of his spiritual children. Through Jesus, I saw and felt everything. Your soul, I see it as you see yourself in a mirror. But it wasn't just in the confessional. Padre Pio saw the invisible damage that indifference creates in marriage. He saw what happens when love grows cold. Not dramatic explosions, not screaming fights, coldness, silence, the slow death of attention. Another woman came to him with a story that Dr. Shuba, one of Padre Pio's spiritual sons, carried to the saint. The woman was Dr. Shuba's relative. Her husband had mistreated her for years. The marriage had become, in Dr. Shuba's words, an absolute disaster. Dr. Shuba believed she was right to seek a divorce. He told Padre Pio as much. Padre Pio disagreed. He said the marriage should not be dissolved. Dr. Shuba went back to his relative and told her what Padre Pio had said. She thought about it deeply. She decided to change course. She sat down and wrote Padre Pio a long letter. She poured out her heartaches. She described the pain of living with a man who had stopped caring. The next morning, she decided to mail it. Before she could leave for the post office, there was a knock at her door. It was her husband. Years of separation had passed. He stood on the front porch, unable to look her in the eye. He told her he had been to see Padre Pio. He said Padre Pio told him to go to his wife and reconcile, but I do not have the courage, he had told Padre Pio. I treated her badly. I'm ashamed. I cannot face her. Then tell her I have sent you to reconcile with her, Padre Pio had said. She would not believe me if I told her that, the man replied. Then tell her I have already read the letter she wrote to me, Padre Pio said. And he told the man details from the letter that had not been mailed yet, the letter that was still sitting on the table inside the house. The husband stood there on the porch and asked his wife for forgiveness. He told her that Padre Pio wanted their marriage to work out. He told her about the letter. The wife listened in amazement. She was the only person who knew about that letter. Yet Padre Pio had known the contents. She felt her husband's sincerity. She let go of the pain. They reconciled. They found happiness again. Padre Pio understood something that modern culture has forgotten. Marriage is not just a contract. It is not just a legal arrangement. It is a sacrament. It is a visible sign of invisible grace. And when that grace is abandoned, when spouses stop caring, when indifference replaces love, something breaks in the spiritual order, something visible to those who can see. Giovanni Siena met Padre Pio for the first time in 1928. He was 8 years old. It was his first Holy Communion. Decades later, Giovanni would write a book about his friendship with the saint. The book was called Il mio amico Padre Pio, My Friend Padre Pio. Giovanni worked in the hospital that Padre Pio built. He saw the saint almost every day. There was a young woman named Paola. She was 21 years old. She had been suffering from depression and severe lung problems. She was dying. Her family brought her to see Padre Pio. Through what she would later describe as his miraculous intercession, she recovered. After she healed, Paola felt called to marriage. She wanted to start a family. She asked Padre Pio for guidance. He asked her, "What is your deepest desire?" She told him she wanted children. She dreamed of being a mother. "Let's pray that the good God will allow you to meet a good young man," Padre Pio said. He gave her advice. Go to confession regularly. Receive communion every day. Not long after, Paola noticed a man who seemed interested in her. His name was Giovanni. They crossed paths frequently in Padre Pio's circle. They fell in love. On August 27, 1950, at 5 a.m, Padre Pio blessed their marriage. He was moved with emotion. He repeated 3 times at the end of the Mass, "Be happy, be happy, be happy." A few months into the marriage, they learned that Paola could not have children. She was infertile. The doctors were certain. Padre Pio told them he would pray for them. He promised to recite the chaplet of the Sacred Heart of Jesus every day for their intention. He told Giovanni, "You'll see, you'll have as many children as the choirs of angels." That is to say, 9. Giovanni would later write about what happened next. Paola became pregnant. Then again. 9 children were born to a woman who had been declared infertile. 60 years after their wedding day, Paola would say, after 60 years of marriage, "I can say that Padre Pio's recipe works. Giovanni and I love each other as much as on the first day." Well, what was the recipe? Prayer, daily confession, daily communion. Not as rituals, as acts of attention, acts of care. The same attention, the same care that makes a marriage live. But Padre Pio also saw what happens when that attention dies, when spouses stop praying, when they stop caring, when they become strangers to each other. He saw it happen slowly. One missed dinner conversation, one evening spent in silence, one day without a kind word, then another, then a week, then a year. The coldness spreads like frost. There was a man named Aurelio. He had a brother who felt nothing for Padre Pio. The brother said all the talk about the saint left him cold and completely indifferent. One day, the brother decided to walk into the church of Our Lady of Grace in San Giovanni Rotondo. He sat alone on one of the back benches. Suddenly, he felt a tap on his shoulder. He heard a stern voice. He turned to see who it was. There was no one there. He moved to another bench. Again, he felt someone touch his shoulder. Again, he heard an authoritative voice. He looked closely. No one was there. Fear mounted. He broke out in a cold sweat. The next time Aurelio saw his brother, he heard every detail of the story. The brother had been indifferent. Padre Pio had reached him anyway. Indifference. That was the word Padre Pio used to describe the work of Satan. He taught his spiritual children how to recognize the enemy. That which comes from Satan begins with calmness and ends in storm, indifference, and apathy. Indifference to what is holy, indifference to the needs of your spouse, indifference to the vows you made, indifference to the life you're building together. If you value documented stories of faith like this, subscribe and help support our work. Comment from which city you're hearing this from. This information is factual, pulled from multiple sources, including documented testimonies collected in Pray, Hope, and Don't Worry newsletters published between 2011 and 2017, Bernard Ruffin's exhaustive biography, and from the archives of the Padre Pio Devotions organization, which has preserved first-hand accounts. Now back to the information. Padre Pio once wrote to one of his spiritual daughters. He asked her, "Can a spouse of God, a heart yearning for God, full of God, let herself be affected by surliness, bad humor, and neglect from this poor world?" He was talking about spiritual marriage, about the soul's relationship with Christ, but the words apply just as clearly to human marriage. Can a spouse let herself be affected by surliness, by bad humor, by neglect? The answer Padre Pio gave was no. Not if the marriage is rooted in God, not if prayer is present, not if attention is alive. But when prayer dies, when attention dies, the marriage becomes vulnerable. Padre Pio saw this. He saw marriages that looked intact on the outside. The couple still lived in the same house. They still appeared together in public. But inside, the relationship was dead. They were two strangers sharing space. In 1940, Giuseppe di Sessa's wife, Anna Maria, died. Giuseppe was heartbroken. He decided he would never remarry. 2 months later, he went to see Padre Pio. He told him about Anna Maria's death. He explained that he prayed for her every day and offered many sacrifices on behalf of her soul. Padre Pio listened. Then he said something unexpected. "For the sake of your family, you should consider remarrying." Giuseppe was shocked. He had made up his mind. But Padre Pio saw something Giuseppe did not see. He saw that Giuseppe's family needed a mother. He saw that Giuseppe needed a companion. He saw that closing the door to love was not holiness, it was fear. 6 years later, Giuseppe met a woman named Maria Grazia. Maria told Giuseppe about a dream she had once had about Padre Pio. In her dream, Padre Pio told her she should marry. She had explained to Padre Pio in the dream that she felt called to another mission. Marriage, too, is a mission, Padre Pio had said. If marriage is a mission, then make it work out for me, Maria replied. Then she woke up. Giuseppe and Maria fell in love. When Giuseppe proposed, Maria happily accepted. After the wedding, they made a trip to San Giovanni Rotondo to see Padre Pio and tell him the good news. Padre Pio smiled. He had already known. Marriage is a mission, that's what Padre Pio said in the dream. Not a hobby. Not a side project. A mission. And missions require attention. They require care. They require vigilance. When a soldier stops caring about his mission, people die. When a spouse stops caring about the marriage, something dies too. There was a young woman named Angela. She was thinking seriously about her future. Several men had asked for her hand in marriage. She went to San Giovanni Rotondo to ask Padre Pio's advice. She told him she was afraid to make the choice. She asked him which man might be the most suitable partner. Padre Pio replied, I'm not a fortune teller. But then he told her something else. Come back when you have prayed about it. Bring me the names of the men who have proposed. We will pray together. Angela came back with the names. Padre Pio prayed. He told her, none of these men are right for you. Wait, the right one has not yet appeared. Angela was confused. She returned home. Not long after, she met Giovanni. Giovanni's mother introduced them. She hoped Giovanni would ask Angela for her hand in marriage. Giovanni went to see Padre Pio. He told Padre Pio that his mother had introduced him to Angela. Padre Pio's face lit up. You two are made for each other, he said. I think you should marry her. But war is about to break out, Giovanni answered. I could be called up for military duty at any moment. The war will not touch you, Padre Pio said. Angela and Giovanni were married in 1940. Soon after, Giovanni received notification that he was to report for military service. When he presented himself at the recruiting office, he was told that another man had been substituted in his place. He would not be required to serve. The war will not touch you. Padre Pio had seen it. Several years later, Angela visited Padre Pio again. She told him that she and Giovanni were very sad because their marriage had not been blessed with children. Do not worry, Padre Pio said. The children will come. As a matter of fact, you can begin to prepare the baby clothing now. The first will be boys, and the last will be girls. Some time later, Angela was struck with terrible pain. The doctor said an operation might be necessary. But why is there talk of an operation? Padre Pio said to Angela. You are expecting a baby. Angela and Giovanni were elated. What shall we name our baby? Giovanni asked. Name the first ones, whatever you want. You can name the last one after me. Angela and Giovanni became the proud parents of a baby boy. 2 more boys followed. 6 years later, Angela became sick. A friend who lived in San Giovanni Rotondo told Padre Pio that Angela was unwell. Padre Pio sent word. She is not sick. She is pregnant again, and this time it will be a girl. Attention. Care. Knowledge of the other person's state. That's what these stories show. Padre Pio knew when Angela was pregnant before she knew. He knew when she was in pain. He knew when Giovanni needed reassurance. He paid attention, and he taught his spiritual children to pay attention to each other. But he also saw what happens when that attention disappears. When a husband stops noticing his wife's moods, when a wife stops asking her husband about his day, when the questions stop, when the care evaporates, when the marriage becomes a shared space with separate lives. Lina Fiorellini met Padre Pio in 1919. She worked for the Pontremoli family. She thought very highly of them. She asked Padre Pio to always keep them in his prayers. They are good people, Padre Pio replied. I will remember them before the Lord and pray to Jesus for their salvation. Lina often shared her Catholic faith with Lucia Pontremoli and her son Aldo. Although they were not Christians, they listened with great interest. Aldo was a professor at the University of Milan. He was preparing to go on an expedition to the North Pole. The whole world was following the upcoming expedition with great anticipation. Lina continued to pray for the Pontremoli family. Padre Pio encouraged Lina to offer up all of her sufferings for the conversion of souls, including Lucia's. On Holy Thursday, 1946, Lucia asked for baptism. Padre Pio was filled with joy when Lina told him the good news. Lina and Padre Pio had both been praying for Lucia for more than 25 years. 25 years of attention, 25 years of care, 25 years of not giving up. There was another woman whose name has been withheld from the records. She was married to a very successful businessman. Soon after their marriage, her husband became cold and indifferent, and when he got home from work in the evenings, he hardly spoke to her. Whenever he could find the chance to get away, he would leave the house and not return until very late. The woman became very depressed. She prayed for a solution. She possessed a holy card of Padre Pio. She knew practically nothing about him, but she was glad she had prayed to him. Please, save our marriage. That evening, her husband returned home very late, as usual. During the night, he had a strange dream. He was in a beautiful building. It looked like a brand new hospital with a lovely marble staircase. As he walked down the staircase, he saw 5 monks wearing brown habits coming up toward him. Each one walked past him, but the 6th one stopped in front of him. The monk looked at him sternly. Then he raised his hand in a warning gesture. At once, the man thought of his wife. He thought of how badly he had been treating her. He recognized the monk. It was Padre Pio. When the husband woke up, he went to his wife's bedroom. He knelt beside her bed. He spoke to her with great tenderness. He asked for forgiveness for his coldness, for his neglect. She could hardly believe it. He had not spoken to her with such affection since they were first married. She had never known him to apologize for anything. To see him kneeling at her bedside was perhaps the greatest surprise of all. Because of his pride, he was definitely not the kind of man to get down on his knees for any reason whatsoever. Later, the woman made a trip to San Giovanni Rotondo. She visited the home for the relief of suffering. The hospital was beautiful in every way. She noticed the wide and attractive marble staircase near the entrance. She remembered her husband had told her that, in his dream, he had been in a beautiful hospital that had a marble staircase. Because of the dream of Padre Pio, her husband made a great effort to change. Their marriage was blessed with happiness from that time forward. The marble staircase. Padre Pio built that hospital. The Casa Sollievo della Sofferenza, the home for the relief of suffering. The ground was broken in 1947. The hospital opened in May 1956. It was Padre Pio's dream to create a place where the sick could receive both medical care and spiritual comfort. He spent years raising money. He wrote thousands of letters. He prayed constantly. He poured his attention into every detail, the same attention he poured into souls, the same attention he taught his spiritual children to pour into their marriages. Not grand gestures, not expensive gifts. Attention. Noticing when your spouse is sad, asking questions, listening to the answers, speaking with tenderness, apologizing when you're wrong, getting down on your knees when pride tells you to stay standing. Padre Pio saw what happens when that attention dies. He saw the spiritual consequences. He saw marriages that looked alive, but were dead inside. He saw husbands who came home and treated their wives like furniture. He saw wives who stopped asking their husbands how their day went. He saw couples who lived in the same house but stopped living together. They were roommates, strangers, 2 people passing each other in the hallway. And he saw what Satan does with that indifference. He saw how the enemy uses it. Because indifference is not neutral, it is not passive, it is a weapon. When you stop caring about your spouse, when you stop paying attention, when you stop noticing, you are not just neglecting them, you are wounding them. You're telling them they do not matter. You're telling them they are invisible. Padre Pio once said that Satan begins with calmness and ends in storm, indifference and apathy. That's how it works. It starts small. One evening when you don't ask about your spouse's day, one dinner eaten in silence, one time you forget to say I love you. It seems harmless, it seems like nothing, but it is not nothing. It is the beginning of coldness. And coldness spreads. There was a couple who came to see Padre Pio. They were struggling. The husband had been treating his wife badly for years. She was miserable. They were considering divorce. Padre Pio listened to their story. Then he said something that shocked them both. The marriage should not be dissolved. Stay together. Pray together. Ask God to heal what is broken. The couple left confused. They had expected Padre Pio to give them permission to separate. They had expected him to acknowledge that the marriage was beyond repair. Instead, he told them to stay. He told them to pray. He told them that God could heal what seemed impossible to heal. They decided to follow his advice. They stayed together. They prayed. And slowly, over months and years, the coldness began to thaw. The husband began to notice his wife again. He began to speak to her with kindness. He began to care. And the wife, who had been so wounded, began to forgive. She began to open her heart again. The marriage was saved, not because of grand gestures, but because of attention, because of care, because of prayer. Padre Pio understood that marriage is not sustained by feelings. Feelings come and go. Love, the kind of love that lasts, is a decision. It is a choice to pay attention, a choice to care, a choice to notice, a choice to speak kindly, a choice to forgive, a choice to stay when everything in you wants to leave. And he understood that when spouses stop making that choice, when they stop caring, when they become indifferent, something spiritual breaks. Not just emotional, not just psychological, spiritual. Because marriage is a sacrament. It is a visible sign of invisible grace. And when the visible sign falls apart, the invisible grace is obscured. People look at the broken marriage and they do not see God. They see failure. They see pain. They see 2 people who could not make it work. But Padre Pio also saw that it is never too late, even when the coldness has spread, even when the marriage seems dead, even when both spouses have given up. It is never too late to start paying attention again. Never too late to start caring. Never too late to kneel down beside your spouse's bed and ask for forgiveness. never too late to pray. The woman who prayed with the holy card of Padre Pio did not know anything about him. She did not know about the stigmata. She did not know about his ability to read souls. She did not know about the miracles. She just had a holy card and a desperate prayer. Please, save our marriage. And Padre Pio answered. Not because she was holy, not because she was perfect, but because she cared enough to pray. She paid attention to the fact that her marriage was dying, and she asked for help. That is what Padre Pio saw. He saw that the willingness to ask for help is itself a sign of hope. The willingness to admit that something is wrong. The willingness to say, I cannot fix this on my own. The willingness to kneel down and pray. That willingness is where healing begins. Dr. Suba, one of Padre Pio's spiritual sons, brought his relative's case to the saint. The woman's marriage had become an absolute disaster. Her husband had mistreated her for years. Dr. Suba believed divorce was the right solution. Padre Pio disagreed. He told Dr. Suba the marriage should not be dissolved. He told the woman to write him a letter. He told her to pour out her heartaches. And then he did something supernatural. He read the letter before it was mailed. He told the husband what was in the letter. And the husband, confronted with proof that God was watching, that God cared, went to his wife and asked for forgiveness. Padre Pio saw souls. He saw the state of their spiritual lives as clearly as you see your face in a mirror. He could see when someone was in mortal sin. He could see when someone was holding back in confession. He could see when someone was lying. And he could see when a marriage was dying. He could see the coldness. He could see the indifference. He could see the spiritual damage that neglect creates. But he also saw hope. He saw that even the coldest heart could be warmed. Even the most indifferent spouse could learn to care again. Even the most broken marriage could be healed. Not easily, not quickly, but it could be done. With prayer, with attention, with care, with the willingness to get down on your knees and ask for forgiveness. Giovanni and Paola Siena followed Padre Pio's recipe for 60 years. Daily confession, daily communion, daily prayer. And after 60 years, Paola could say, we love each other as much as on the first day. That is what attention does. That is what care does. That is what prayer does. It keeps love alive. Not the feeling of love, the decision of love, the choice to notice, the choice to care, the choice to stay. Padre Pio spent his life teaching this. He spent 12 to 15 hours a day in the confessional. He heard the same sins over and over. He heard about marriages falling apart. He heard about husbands who stopped caring. He heard about wives who felt invisible. He heard about couples who had given up. And he told them all the same thing. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Worry is useless. God is merciful and will hear your prayer. That was his famous maxim. Pray, hope, and don't worry. Not because everything would be easy, not because there would be no pain, but because God is present. God is watching. God cares. And if you ask for help, if you pay attention, if you make the choice to care, God will help you. The woman who held the holy card and prayed for her marriage did not know any of this. She just knew she was desperate. She just knew her husband had become a stranger. She just knew she could not live like this anymore. So she prayed. And Padre Pio appeared to her husband in a dream. He stood on the marble staircase. He raised his hand in warning. He reminded the husband of his wife. He called him back to attention. He called him back to care. And the husband responded. He woke up. He went to his wife. He knelt down. He asked for forgiveness. He changed. Not perfectly, not instantly, but he changed. He made the choice to care again. He made the choice to pay attention. He made the choice to love, not as a feeling, as a decision. That is what Padre Pio saw when spouses stopped caring. He saw the spiritual damage. He saw the coldness spreading. He saw the indifference taking root. He saw the enemy using neglect as a weapon, but he also saw hope. He saw that it was never too late. He saw that even the coldest heart could be warmed. He saw that even the most broken marriage could be healed. If the spouses were willing, if they would pray, if they would pay attention, if they would care. In 1968, Padre Pio died. He was 81 years old. He had borne the stigmata for 50 years. He had heard confessions for nearly 6 decades. He had counseled thousands of people. He had built a hospital. He had established prayer groups around the world. He had become one of the most famous religious figures of the 20th century. And through it all, he taught the same lesson. Pay attention, care, pray, don't give up. The couples who followed his advice found happiness. Giovanni and Paola Siena, 9 children. 60 years of marriage. Still in love? Angela and Giovanni Rispoli, 3 boys, 1 girl. A marriage that started with fear and ended with joy. Giuseppe Di Sessa and Maria Grazia, a second chance at love, a dream that became reality. The unnamed woman and her businessman husband. A marriage saved by a dream of a marble staircase. But there were others, couples who did not follow his advice, couples who chose indifference over attention, couples who chose coldness over care, couples who chose silence over prayer. Padre Pio saw them too. He saw their marriages fall apart. He saw the pain they caused each other. He saw the spiritual damage that neglect creates. He saw children growing up in homes where love had died. He saw spouses becoming strangers. He saw the enemy winning, and he wept, because he knew it did not have to be that way. He knew that every marriage could be saved if the spouses were willing, if they would pray, if they would pay attention, if they would care. He knew that the recipe was simple, not easy, but simple. Daily confession, daily communion, daily prayer, daily attention, daily care, daily choice to love. The problem was not that people did not know the recipe. The problem was that they did not want to follow it. They wanted their marriages to be easy. They wanted love to be a feeling that never faded. They wanted passion that never cooled. They wanted connection that never required effort. And when they did not get what they wanted, they gave up. They stopped caring. They became indifferent. They walked away. Padre Pio saw all of this. He saw it in the confessional. He saw it in the letters people wrote to him. He saw it in the faces of the women who came to him crying. He saw it in the eyes of the men who came to him broken. He saw marriages dying all around him, and he did everything he could to save them. He prayed. He counseled. He intervened supernaturally when necessary. He appeared in dreams. He read letters that had not been mailed. He told husbands to go home and ask for forgiveness. He told wives to stay and pray. He told couples to keep trying, to keep caring, to not give up. And many listened. Many followed his advice. Many were saved, but not all. Some chose indifference. Some chose coldness. Some chose to walk away. And Padre Pio could not stop them, because he respected free will. He could counsel, he could pray, he could intervene, but he could not force anyone to choose love. That choice had to come from within. The marble staircase in the home for the relief of suffering still stands today. Thousands of people walk up and down those stairs every year. Patients going to appointments, doctors making rounds, visitors coming to see loved ones, and every once in a while, someone stops on the stairs. They remember the story. The woman who prayed, the husband who dreamed, the monk who raised his hand in warning, the marriage that was saved, and they make a choice. They decide to pay attention. They decide to care. They decide to go home and ask for forgiveness. They decide to love. That is Padre Pio's legacy. Not just the miracles, not just the stigmata, not just the hospital, but the lives he changed, the marriages he saved, the couples he taught to love each other, the recipe he gave them: pray, hope, don't worry, pay attention, care, choose love every single day. In 1947, construction began on the hospital. In 1950, Giovanni and Paola Siena were married. In 1956, the hospital opened its doors. The marble staircase was complete. And somewhere in Italy, a woman held a holy card and prayed for her dying marriage. Padre Pio heard. He answered. The husband dreamed. He changed. The marriage was saved. Another soul rescued from indifference. Another heart warmed by care. Another marriage brought back from the dead by the simple choice to pay attention. Padre Pio saw what happens when spouses stop caring. He saw the coldness. He saw the damage. He saw the pain. But he also saw hope. He saw that it was never too late. He saw that even the coldest heart could be warmed. He saw that attention and care and prayer could save what seemed beyond saving. And he spent his life teaching that truth to anyone who would listen, to anyone who would follow his recipe, to anyone who would make the choice to love. That is what he saw. That is what he taught. That is his legacy. The marble staircase stands. The hospital heals. The marriages he saved continue. The couples who followed his advice still love each other. And somewhere, even now, someone is holding a holy card. Someone is praying for a dying marriage. Someone is desperate. And Padre Pio is listening, still teaching, still counseling, still telling the same truth he told for 60 years. Pay attention, care, pray. Don't give up. Love is a choice. Make it every single day. In 2002, Pope John Paul II canonized Francesco Forgione as Saint Pio of Pietrelcina. The ceremony took place in St. Peter's Square. Hundreds of thousands of people attended, but the real miracle was not in Rome. The real miracle was in all the homes around the world where couples were still following Padre Pio's recipe, still praying together, still going to confession, still receiving communion, still paying attention to each other, still caring, still choosing love, still married after 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, still in love, because they learned from a Capuchin friar with wounded hands that love is not a feeling. Love is a decision, and that decision must be made every single day.